So how did your mom's parents meet? Edith Lighthizer.
Okay, well, great question. As I mentioned, my grandmother was raised on a scratch farm outside of McConnellsville, down in Morgan County. It's the nearest crossroads was a little town that's still there called Neelyville, and about the only building that remains standing in Neelyville is the Ebenezer Methodist Church, which was, the centerpiece of the township, really. Very close to the Muskingum River, so you're downstream from McConnellsville, and you're upstream from Marietta. The Muskingum River opens into the Ohio River at Marietta. Her father, see, how did they meet? Well, she grew up the oldest of 4 kids on a farm. Her dad's cash income came from working with the county as a contractor to build bridges and improve roads in the county. Her mother was his name was Lighthizer. Her mother was a Spencer, which was a very numerous, if not prominent, name in Morgan County. They'd come from Loudoun County, Virginia, in the early years of the expansion westward once the Ohio territories became safe. In fact, her grandfather was actually born on the road in what is now Belmont County, Ohio. What drew them specifically to Morgan County, I don't know, but back in those days, whether they were immigrants off the ship or, just farm communities, when they expanded, they usually went where another relative or friend had already sent news that, hey, this is a good place to be. But there's an 1835 grave in the graveyard of Ebenezer, and that belonged to Nathan Spencer and his bride, Brett Hatcher's ancestor, Sarah Hatcher. There were 2 Nathan Spencers, the one that Sarah was married to, and then one of their sons was also Nathan. And that son, the younger Nathan, was the father of my great-grandmother. It was the kind of community that had, because it was so farm-based, they valued education to a point. I mean, high school didn't exist as we know it now, maybe in some of the towns and cities, but they had one-room schoolhouses, and there would be a teacher, sometimes only one, educating 5-year-olds and 15-year-olds. Although the upper range of that was rare because kids were labor, and no matter how loving the situation at home was, they were still counted on to help mom and dad with gardens and other babies and heavy farm work and stuff like that. So it was nothing my grandmother wanted to do. And there was a policy or a opportunity once somebody ended their traditional elementary education that they could take a course and become a teacher. And in my grandmother's case, she went right back to teaching in the very school that she herself was raised, and that 2 of her students, her first year of teaching, were her younger brothers. Uncle Billy, remember Uncle Billy? Mm-hmm. Don't know which hand it was. And her loving brother, Merritt. And I'm sure it was a very, very sad occasion, but Merritt was a victim of the flu of 1918. although he lived to adulthood, and I have pictures of him visiting Columbus, but he died. And so Dee Dee, as we called her, taught for 2 or 3 years, and basically it was almost a what they call it when you indentured. It was almost lovingly indentured to your family. It was agreed upon that you would give the meager pay that the county or the township was paying you, and turn it over to your dad.
Really?
Yeah.
What if you had a baby or a husband?
Well, they didn't.
I mean,
Once they had a husband, then they were no longer a teacher. These were all spinsters.
oh,
They were young spinsters. But the local bodies of education, of which they all had them, I mean, the same kinds of institutions that we have now existed back then. They were just on a smaller scale and agricultural based. So her 3 years was up, and a church that she attended was home. People that attended the church she attended, Ebenezer, some of them came to Columbus, they came to the city, and they all joined the same church here in town. In fact, there were a couple of them, and I personally have been inside both of them. One was where I took ballet classes on the corner of Indianola and 12th. That's no longer there. And then there was one across the street from a house I lived in on East Avenue, East and up by Blue Danube. And that's a big, massive church, and that's still there. But her social network then was established in Columbus, and she worked as a single woman, as a secretary for a bank, and she was a career woman, I guess you'd call that, from probably about 1913 till the World War I, because when World War I came, she volunteered for the Red Cross to be a Red Cross aide in France during World War I. So her experiences, first of all, is something very enjoyable for her. Her experiences worked with businessmen, like presidents of banks and things like that. She held them in high esteem. And between her work, which probably she still sent a good part of down home to her family, and her social circle, she was quite content to live in Columbus. A woman she worked with was my grandfather's sister, Mary, Aunt Mary. And, my grandfather had 4 sisters and 1 brother. And one of his sisters was taken when she was still in high school. She went to North High School when it was, it's the same building. It's on Arcadia right now. So she died of something. It wasn't the flu, but it was something. And then one of his sisters was a nun, Aunt Anne. So there was Aunt Mary and Aunt Anne. One of his sisters married a guy named George Gallagher. George Gallagher's family owned a cigar manufacturing company, and the slogan of the cigar was, "The cigar that made the nickel famous." And then, but he was not, I don't know what he was doing in Columbus, but he was not from here. He was from Texas, and they got married, and Aunt Frances went away to I think Houston. Now I did meet their daughter, who was first cousin to my mom. She visited Lodi once because she was a career librarian, and she wanted to go to Worcester, Ohio, to this company named Gershenslagen, which may still be around. They manufactured bookmobiles, which was like a long camper with shelves full of books. That I benefited myself from the bookmobile in Lodi. I would come to Lodi School once a week, and you take out and return your books there. So anyway,
Like she wanted to visit it just out of curiosity, or did she
yeah,
want to buy one?
like I used to. Oh no, like I used to like visit diners. It was
Okay.
her, and she also didn't talk about it at the time. But I think, in my memory, there was clear evidence that she played for the other team, which my mom, I'm sure, was fully aware of, because I think my mom had a nose for that anyway. And who knows? Of course, they lived in Texas, so who knows what the family knew about it. But let's see. Aunt Mary eventually somehow got around to introducing her brother, Jim Welsh, to Edith Lighthizer. I don't know how long the romance carried on. I don't even know if that was before or after the Red Cross experience in France. But my grandmother definitely did get to go to France. She had a chest full of goodies that I would get into with her permission. She liked to take trinkets and postcards and letters out of the chest and show me. And when I visited in the summertime. And one thing that was in that chest that I eventually got was a pair of artillery binoculars that they actually used to estimate how to set the guns to go a certain distance and to see then the results of the artillery rounds. That and something they call a Sam Brown belt, which if you've seen pictures of World War I era soldiers, it was a belt that went around the waist, but also diagonally from the waist across the front and over the opposite shoulder and then down the back. It was something that was pretty much reserved for officers as their dress uniform. They didn't wear it to battle. Anyway, those are things. And then a lot of old postcards and coins. Had a lot of coins. So they got married. Since she got back from France in 1919 or so, I'm guessing she went back to work in Columbus, stayed in touch obviously with Aunt Mary, and probably didn't meet my grandfather until the 1920s, because they got married in April of 1924. You know, my mom was born December of the following year. My grandfather by that time was living in Akron because Goodrich was expanding. Oh, his brother-in-law, Ray Hanna, who my grandmother always had a little bit of distaste from, but Mary was Mary Hanna, married to Ray Hanna, and Ray had gone to Akron and gotten a job with Goodrich, and he said, "Jim, come to Goodrich." So my grandfather did. My grandfather started employment in the 1920s and retired, supposedly never having missed a day. Retired after 36 years at Goodrich.
Wait, so your grandfather and Dee Dee
And yeah, so
moved to Akron
yeah,
in the 20s?
It was definitely in the 20s, because that's when the marriage, the ceremony was in Cleveland. Don't know why or with whom, but I think my grandmother, boy, I wish I knew. I think my grandmother might have had a job in Cleveland at that time, knowing that they were going to get married and then she'd be moving to Akron.
Wow.
And so then my mother was born a year and a half later, and I've seen every house that she ever lived in.
Wow.
She lived. Well, we can talk about that.